Hi guys, it's Carrie, and recently I have been getting a lot of requests to make a video like this, and it honestly scares me a little bit. You guys want to know how I typically plan my trips. Every single trip is really different, and they're also kind of chaotic, and then they boil down to a very precise plan. So I'm gonna kind of reveal how much of a maniac I am in this video. I do want to put a little disclaimer out though. I'm going to be talking specifically about my trip to Tokyo that I just took. You can watch the vlog up here. When I plan a trip specifically that I know I want to vlog, I do tend to go way more into detail than I normally would. I am definitely a big supporter of spontaneity and wandering and finding things, but for kind of, I don't want to call it work, but like for the purpose of vlogging, I tend to be much more detail oriented. I also find that when you're solo traveling, it's really nice to have a detailed plan, or like a moderately detailed plan, because it can kind of be overwhelming. But anyway, let's just get into it. This is gonna be messy, but I'm gonna try my best. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the very nitty gritty first. This is my absolute last step when I'm planning a trip, but I wanna get it over with in the beginning because it is absolutely ridiculous. I do plan what I'm going to be listening to. So this is specifically for if you're solo traveling. If you're with someone else, talk to them. I made the horrible mistake last time I was solo traveling. I listened to really bummer music, and so I was kind of down that whole trip. Like I was happy, but I was also just like very melancholy. So I don't recommend, but what I did for this trip was actually like took my trip to another level. I listened to an audiobook, and you know what that means. Audible sponsored this video. Thank you so much. So if you don't know what Audible is, hello, it is one of the largest digital libraries of audiobooks, podcasts. They also have Audible Originals, which is content original, unique to Audible. So it could be history, it could be comedy, and they're by creators that you probably already know and love. They also just started guided meditation, which is awesome. Members will get 1 free credit for an audiobook every single month, plus 2 Audible originals that you get to keep for forever, and you don't need to spend the credits right away, so you can kind of save them up if you would like to try it out. Audible was nice enough to offer premium membership, which means you get 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals. If you click the link in my description, it is audible.com/caricakes. If you're in the US, you can text caricakes to 500. But anyway, what did I listen to? They have a bunch of Murakami on there, and I had never listened to a Murakami audiobook, and they had The Elephant Vanishes, which is a collection of his short stories. If you are looking for how to start with Murakami, I definitely suggest starting with his short stories, and so The Elephant Vanishes is a beautiful way to start. And so I was walking around Tokyo listening to all these stories that take place in Japan, and it was so immersive and so fun. Like weirdly made me like look between buildings to like look for cats, if you know what I'm talking about. Listening to an audiobook that took place in the place that I was exploring, highly suggest. If you haven't given Audible a try, it's free. Just click my link, give it a go. So anyway, that is the absolute last step. Let's move on to the more general picture. Like I said, every single trip is different, especially when it comes to planning my flights. And sometimes it is, I have found a cheap flight and I will plan a trip around that. Sometimes I have a location and I will find a cheap flight around that. So I typically use 2 different sites. You've probably heard of them both. The first one I use is Skyscanner, and I use Skyscanner when I either have no dates that matter. Like I'm like, man, I really want to go to Tokyo. I will check whenever it's cheapest and I will go, because you can search by cheapest month and stuff like that. Or the opposite, if I have dates that I want to work with, but I don't have anywhere in particular I want to go, you can search anywhere and they will just show you where the cheapest flights are from where you're starting during those dates, which is really, really dangerous if you like to travel. What I tend to use the most is actually Google Flights. It's normally because I do have a general timeline and I have a general location that I want to go to. I have found that they have really great deals. It's really user-friendly too. And I've also found that with Skyscanner or Kayak or similar sites like that, you tend to book through a middleman, so like Expedia or something like that. And with Google Flights, you tend to book directly through the airline. And I found that with like, if there's a flight cancellation or you miss your flight or something like that, it's usually easier for you to deal with problems like that if you've booked directly through the airline, but also prices are different. So yeah, those are the two that I usually use, but honestly, Google Flights has been my BFF for 2 years. So yeah, those are how I pick my flights. Next up, where to go, which is probably why you guys are actually here. And I gotta tell you, it's my good old friend Instagram. One thing that I hope you guys already do, and if you don't do this, start now. Have a little folder on Instagram for saved photos of places that you want to go to, even if you have absolutely no plans. Like I have, is it Porto? Let me look. My Google Maps is so ridiculous. I have 2 cafes right next to each other saved in Porto. And though I have no plans to go to Portugal, when I do, because I desperately do, don't worry, when that does happen, I will have 2 places already saved that I know I want to get breakfast at. It's like mild torture because you don't know when you're going to ever be there in the future, but it is very nice to save. And that's actually how I do a lot of my Korea trips, is I will save a bunch of things, and then if I find that I have bookmarked more than one place in a city, that's when I'll like start actively planning a trip to that city. But specifically for Tokyo, Tokyo is a huge city and I've already been there before. So how I approached it goes kind of like this. Obviously you start off with the big touristy things. There is no shame in going to the popular places, I think. And so I've already kind of done that whole thing in Tokyo, but the places that stood out to me were, I really like to go back to Shibuya Crossing. I really love the view from the Mori Art Museum. I had some big things that I knew I wanted to do, and then when I wanted to go on the more local level, maybe try and find hidden gems, that is when I turned back to my dear friend Instagram. And I start off with English hashtags, so hashtag Tokyo, hashtag Tokyo Cafe. The only problem with the English hashtag is that it's like very popular. It has a lot of just like photography photos, which are beautiful, but they aren't necessarily helping you find exact places to go. I actually, after I go through and try and look at like Tokyo Cafe, Tokyo Restaurant, and try and save as many as I can, I go actually into Korean hashtags. And I know that that's not very helpful for people who don't speak Korean, but you can do this with any other language that you mildly understand. And I say mildly because you really don't need that much language skill to search in other languages. You just need to know how to say, like for example, Tokyo Yoheng, Tokyo Trip, Tokyo Cafe, Tokyo Matchip. As long as you can figure those out, if you click on the location that you like, chances are it's probably written in English or Japanese, but you can copy that and put it into Google Maps and you can find it. And you know how when people, like when you speak in a different language, it affects how you think? I think when you speak in a different language, it also affects like how you travel, because there are places that English speaking people go to, and then there are places that Korean people go to, that they just, for some reason, some of them just don't connect. And so I found that a lot of the places I like to go to tend to be more like what a typical Korean traveler would go to. So finding the hashtags in Korean is really nice, but again, do it in whatever language you have a handle of. Do it in Spanish, do it in Russian, whatever you can find. And so eventually you will have a really big saved folder of places you can go to in Tokyo. And I also then go through YouTube a little bit, but I find that YouTube people don't tend to like linking exactly where the place is. And then I haven't had too much luck with blogs, but I do have a few influencers on Instagram that I do really like, or on YouTube as well, and then I'll like go through theirs as well and write everything down. So then I have this huge old list and I turn to my dear friend Google Maps. Google Maps doesn't really work in Korea, and so when I went to Japan for the first time as a solo traveler, I did not trust Google Maps with my life. I thought it was totally inaccurate, but that is so wrong, you guys. If you go to Japan, Google Maps is insanely accurate, like down to the second of when your train is going to arrive, tells you what platform. It is an invaluable tool, so definitely fall in love. What I will do then, from my giant list of places I want to go to, I will then go ahead and star all of my places. And then once I'm able to see kind of a concentration of like what neighborhood I'm going to and stuff like that, I will then zoom in, and usually Google Maps will suggest other places of interest, like maybe there was a temple I didn't know about that was right next to a thrift store, stuff like that. So I will just kind of fill in and star anything that might look interesting. Then when I zoom out, you can kind of see clusters, like how many neighborhoods are you interested in? And this can tell me two very important things. Number one, where should I stay? So at this point, I haven't booked my housing yet because I'm still in the planning mode. If I notice that all the things I want to do are on the west side of Tokyo, I'm obviously not going to stay on the east side and vice versa. So that really helps you with figuring out where you want to stay. You can look up what subway lines would be great to stay on, etc. And number two, it tells me how much time do I really need. So I also haven't necessarily booked my flight yet. I've probably bookmarked how much it's going to be, but I haven't actually paid for it. And so when I'm looking at all the things I want to do, how many neighborhoods I want to hit, how far everything is, I can kind of figure like, hey, do I need 3 days? Do I need 4 days? How much time do I really need? So it's really, really invaluable for those two reasons, which can kind of make or break a trip. Your little zoom out of Google Maps can tell you a lot. And so for a usual trip, if I was going with a friend, for example, like when Kayla and I went to Scotland, that's pretty much where we stopped our planning. But because this was a trip that I am planning to vlog, I wanted to make sure that I could see as much as possible and show you guys everything. Like, I didn't want to get somewhere and have a place be closed. So what I do now is I get down into the nitty-gritty. In the next step, I look at my list and I plan out the things that I really want to show you guys. I really prioritize each thing that I want to see, and then I will go in and I will look, usually on Google Maps, they're pretty clear about it. I will look up when they are open. So are they closed on a Monday? Do they open at noon? Do they open at 1? And then that is when I will kind of make my itinerary. Yes, I do like write out an itinerary with time slots and everything. And I will actually email it to myself because I'm nuts. And so I've gotten a lot of questions about like, how do you get to places and they're so empty? Like, why do you always have pictures with nobody in them? And it's because I typically, if it's a popular place, like for example, Onibus Coffee that I went to, I know that's a popular place. So I specifically went there on a weekday, and did I go on a Saturday? Well, anyway, I specifically got there exactly when it opened. So if it opens at 9, I got there. I think I got there at like 9:05. And so there was one other guy there. I was able to get the seat that I wanted. If I had arrived at 10, I would have been turned away because there weren't any seats. So especially if you want to vlog and introduce as many places as you can, prioritizing getting to the busy places first is really, really helpful. So that's basically why my first stop is always kind of my most important. And then throughout the day, I'll just base it off of like what time the stores open, because they usually open later. Yes. Next up, budgeting. So this is something that I need to get a lot better with, but I think I'm usually pretty okay with budgeting. Now that I've hammered out what I want to do, where I want to stay, how long I need to stay, that's when I start to look at how much money do I need, and you need to think about how many times do I, like how many cafes do I really need to go to? How many times do I want to have dessert? Excuse me. A typical meal, a pretty good estimate would be $10 per meal. So you really have to think, do you really need breakfast, lunch, and dinner out at a restaurant, or can you kind of hit a convenience store a couple of times? And convenience store food in Japan, you guys know, is so good. So I hit the convenience store more often than not when I'm in Japan. Also, planning your trips as far as should I walk or should I take the subway? The subway is much more expensive than Korea. If you're coming from New York, you're probably like, oh, it's fine. Google Maps actually tells you if you plan a trip, like if I'm going from Harajuku to Tokyo Station, it will show you how much money that will cost you. So you can kind of look and be like, okay, I'm gonna spend like $10 in transportation on this day. Is there any way that I can walk? Is there any, you know? So then once I've got a general plan as far as like, all right, I'm gonna give myself this much to shop, this much food, I actually exchange my money beforehand, and I know some people are like, you've got to do it at the bank or you've got to do it at the airport. I like to have the money in my hands before I arrive in Japan. So what I've always done, and I've never really noticed like a huge difference in exchange rate, I will go to my local bank, I will take money out of the ATM, go to the counter, exchange it for yen, and then you can ask them for smaller bills or larger bills. I tend to ask for smaller, so like 1,000 yen, which is like $10 bills. And so that way I'm able to land in Japan and I don't have to worry about having cash. Go straight to the subway station, fill up my card, and be on my merry way. Worst case scenario, if I need any extra money, I can get it from an ATM, and they have ATMs in every single convenience store all over Japan. But I actually, this trip, I had like $40 left over. So guess I just have to go back to Japan and go spend it, so bummer. And then just for final touches, just because I'm a little bit of a worrywart, I'm a big fan of screenshotting. I will take a screenshot of the directions of how to get to the airport, to my hotel, to my Airbnb, etc. Just because you are never really sure about the Wi-Fi access wherever you are. Even the airport sometimes kind of stinks. So I will have things saved as a picture in case for whatever reason I can't open my email, I can't open the PDF that I downloaded. So like if you're staying in an Airbnb, screenshot the Wi-Fi password, screenshot the access code, screenshot the email for your reservation at a hotel, stuff like that. I just highly suggest it. So most of the time I don't need to use it, but it is very, very nice to have just a little bit of a backup. And then that is kind of how much I planned. We ended up planning a meetup on the fly, which was really nice, and I kind of scrapped the last day of what I was planning to do. I was gonna go to the east side of Tokyo, and that's kind of my final tip, is just to save the things that you're kind of least interested in for that trip. Save those for the end, because you never know, like travel fatigue is real. So if you get to the end of your trip, even if it's like 4 days, like I was there for 4 days and I was tired. So at the end of my trip, I just kind of wanted to go walk in the park and get a coffee and like explore. Maybe I went back to a thrift store that I didn't have time to go to, stuff like that. So do the things you really want to in the beginning, because you can always come back to them and stuff like that. And then, you know, if you feel like you want a break, give yourself a break. Time that I spent just reading and drawing in Onibus Coffee, I could have been doing other things, but it was just so nice, and that's like a memory I can really cherish. So, you know, you never know what's going to really just make or break your trip. So don't feel that you need to have like a go, 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 go. So that is all. I absolutely adore planning trips. I'm sorry, I do kind of want to remake this eventually. This is more specifically for Tokyo. If I ever find a way to better explain my process, especially I'd love to do one specifically for Korea for you guys, like booking bus tickets and train tickets and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of just what I did for this particular trip. So I hope that that was helpful. There are now police sirens outside, so I definitely need to wrap this up. But thank you Audible for sponsoring this. And thank you guys so much for sticking around. Thank you for the love on my Tokyo vlog. I really, really appreciate it. That was a wonderful trip. Well, I hope that I can be a little bit of a reference for wherever you guys are planning to travel. I always try and put the places that I visited either in the description box or in a blog post, but it will always be linked in the description. So yes, I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. I said thank you. Can you say thank you too much? Maybe I'm overdoing it. Anyway, I will catch you guys later, and yeah, have a beautiful day. Bye.